So just as a reminder to everyone, we are recording today's session, so keep your video on or off as you see fit. So today is our 5th Technical Interview Bootcamp. I am so excited that this has been going super well. We've brought in people from Microsoft, from Amazon, from Facebook, from Kitware, and now we're bringing someone in from Google. So getting a wide range of big tech companies. Today is going to be a little bit different than the last session. We are going to do a little bit more information on how to use the existing system to your advantage, and then we'll jump into a few questions. We have some behavioral questions as well as the course schedule leak code problem. So hopefully you all got a chance to look through that. I'm moving to Idaho, so I can't stay on the call all day today. However, our very own Hareesh is going to be moderating today, and he was actually the industry rep during our first technical interview session, and he has been monumentally helpful in making this whole series work. So thank you so much to Hareesh. And as always, at the end of today's session, there will be a feedback form. Please go ahead and fill that out. I am still looking for an industry representative to lead the next session on August 22nd. So if you know anyone who would be interested, please reach out to me on Slack and let me know, or you can fill that out in the feedback form. And without further ado, I'm going to pass things over to Hareesh and let him start moderating and introduce our engineer. Thank you guys so much for coming, and hopefully today is as helpful as the past have been and you get something new out of it.
All right, thanks. What's up, guys? So today we have James from Google. He's an L4 engineer, and I'll let him talk a little more about himself.
Sure, thanks, Hareesh. Yeah, so I just want to put a quick disclaimer here. My name isn't actually James, and I do want to note that I am going somewhat anonymous for this, mainly because some of the things that I felt were worth sharing and helping you guys out with are things that may be a little bit more controversial. So I didn't want any recording to float out there and a recruiter to take note. Yeah, so I will say you can refer to me as James. My name is nowhere close to being James, my actual real name. So just wanted to, I don't want to lie to people, but that's just an alias I'll be going by. That's the same for the video. There won't be any video. To give a brief backgrounds without revealing too much about my personal identifiable information. I graduated in 2019. And I joined as a new grad at Facebook. So I guess some of the things that I figured people might be interested in was, so I joined Google right out of college. And then I got promoted in my first 4 months, from which I was able to interview around afterwards. Mostly wanted to see what was out there. And I interviewed for Google at senior level at around 7 months in of experience. I ended up getting slotted for L4, which is like the SD2 equivalent. So I figured at the end of the session, we're doing technical interviews, but figured some of you guys might be heading out to industry later on. So you might be interested in how to progress in your career or how to maximize your compensation potential. So these are the things that I wouldn't necessarily want my personal identity to be tied with. But since I am mostly anonymous, I am down to share as much information as you guys might find helpful for that. So at Google, I work on lower level systems, write C++ code. And so, yeah, if you're also interested in infrastructure, talking about distributed systems or databases, yeah, you can definitely chat with me afterwards about it. So cool. And as for this session, I think what we have planned is kind of an emulation of what maybe a Google interview might look like. I will say most likely course schedule is a bit on the easier side for actual Google interview, but it might be interesting just to see the process of it all and maybe some little things that I might do that might help me stand out as a candidate. So we'll be starting off with some behavioral questions and then going into the coding problem. And for Hareesh, I think we should try out with me being able to ask questions about the question itself, like kind of clarifying. Because I think that's also a huge part about the interview. Are you able to take a vague problem, clarify the important bits, and figure out a way to like work with the interviewer as if they were a coworker and solve the problem together? So yeah, so hopefully it's as similar to an actual interview, but there are caveats, like, for example, I've already solved this problem. So like definitely it's not really as fair, but I hope I can like help point out distinct things that help me make it stand out. So cool. I think I'm down to go right into the interview. I don't know if I got the Google Doc link from Hareesh.
Whoops, yeah, let me send it to you right now.
So just to clarify, Google uses Google Docs for their interviews. So that's why we'll be using Google Doc for this interview. I need access to this.
Right. Whoops.
Sentence. I don't know if Google Docs actually capitalizes every first letter. That would be unfortunate, but.
All right, you should be good this time.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, let's see. How about we do this? Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me. Cool.
Let's start off with the behavioral portion. Sound good?
Yeah. How about we just like, yeah, let's go for that.
All right. So I guess let's just do it like a real interview. So my name is Hareesh. Let me tell you a little bit about what I work on. I work on the People Insight team at Amazon. We mainly do analytics for our worldwide operations organization. We typically work with MapReduce systems as well as the full stack. Most of our stack is serverless. So we typically use stuff like Lambda, Athena, and Athena is backed by Facebook Presto. So
awesome.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Cool. By the way, I'm going to answer as if I was still working at Facebook. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I actually work at Facebook. Oddly enough, I work pretty closely with the Presto team at Facebook. So it's cool to hear. Would love to chat with you about that later. So yeah, a little bit about me. I'm James. I've been working at Facebook for the last 10 months. I work on database systems, writing C++ code. I've been primarily involved with writing distributed systems protocols, and mostly on the like independent ideation and in like rollout implementation. So just got to try a lot of other aspects of the code development cycle. So
would you say there's any part of that you would try to emphasize on? Like what would you say is like the most recent or interesting problem you worked on at on your current team?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely have one that pops to mind for sure. And this was a project that really helped me feel like I was becoming a solid contributor at the company. So just to give a bit of context, we're on a pretty big distributed database system that provides a large-scale analytics use case for various products, pretty much all products at Facebook. And the core problem that we were running into was we were trying to synchronize on a monotonically increasing number so that we could essentially label data for what is essentially a batch atomic write. And the previous implementation was using Zookeeper, Facebook's Zookeeper equivalent, and using that as a kind of as a huge lock over this procedure that would go across the network. And that was great for the time when it was first implemented to support consistent reads. But as time went on, we went on to add hundreds of nodes, and we started to run into minutes latency just to add, you know, like instead of just to get the next number in our sequence. So we had this issue. There were definitely prior attempts to solve this issue, but there weren't any super novel solutions coming out. And the senior developer working on it ended up leaving the company. So it was kind of out there in limbo. And as I was ramping up and eventually ramped up and was looking for new projects to tackle. One of them that they gave was this. They had this problem, ambiguous problem they wanted to solve. And they originally pitched some prior solutions. And when it comes down to the problem itself, the crux of the problem is actually a like unsolvable computer science problem of like, how do you do distributed monotonic increasing IDs in like essentially without having to synchronize across all nodes. And so fundamentally solving that problem is, for now, based on our knowledge, is impossible. So definitely given that all the solutions that were come up were with that in consideration and never really solved, how can we do this reliably and scalably? And so I actually ended up looking at the problem and rethinking and kind of, I didn't actually solve the core problem, the computer science problem, but what I did was I reworded the problem. I figured, wait, what is our actual use case? Why do we need these IDs? And I figured out a new scheme, which was based on watermarks, which is very similar to how stream processing works. And I used that new scheme, kind of reword the problem into like, we don't really need strictly monotonically increasing IDs. We kind of just need what I end up labeling as eventually monotonically increasing IDs. And by doing that, we were able to solve a like almost parallel problem and actually end up solving for the entire use case, because we never actually really needed monotonically increasing IDs. So I was pretty proud of that, because that ended up going, reducing our procedure from minutes latencies to milliseconds latency. And so because our service is literally trying to guarantee sub-second latency, and we have a minute latency procedure within the protocol, it was a bottleneck for sure that I was able to solve. And I felt good about being able to like kind of reword problems and rethink like, what are we truly trying to solve, and not just try to, you know, tunnel vision on this one idea of a problem. So so that's one problem. Sorry to go too into detail, but I figured might be worth sharing. So
that seems really interesting. Did you, considering you sort of redefine the problem, did you experience any pushback from your team or anything like that?
Oh yeah, so the initial pushback was the correctness of the protocol and really trying to think about the viability of, is this truly encompass all the problems that we're trying to solve for? But you know, I think the biggest learning lesson for me is when trying to get people on board with your ideas, you should always come from a place of being open to feedback and being open to being wrong. And so that's the way I tackled it. I didn't really pitch a complete solution to them. I really tried to motivate the crux of what I was trying to push as the end solution. So trying to start out with the basics and say like, oh wait, what if we reword this problem to this, instead of just saying, hey, I have this solution. So I figured, given that I was new, I definitely can put that into consideration and try to push the protocol without seeming, I guess, like, to put it bluntly, without seeming like a know-it-all. And that ended up working out pretty well. So for today, the protocol is fully rolled out and is definitely has relieved the bottleneck that they were experiencing.
So yeah, I mean, obviously you're an extremely talented engineer. So I guess the question I'd like to ask you is, what sort of engineer do you think you are? Not just technically, but in general.
Yeah, it's a tough claim for me to say on my own. It's up to whoever I'm working with to evaluate. But I think from my perspective, type of engineer I am is someone that likes to tackle interesting problems, but with the caveat that I will say, and this might hurt me a little bit, but I will say I am, I think, a double-edged sword. And to clarify what I mean by that is, on one end, I might be able to solve problems that maybe people have been stumped on for a while, and you know, is maybe even an impossible problem, you know, as in this case. But I just have this like weird way of looking at things. On the other hand, though, I will say for sure there are times when I can't even solve like super basic things, and it's certainly a thing that I'm trying to work on. But I think the biggest thing for me has been becoming an engineer that, or today, I think I'm an engineer that can solve unique problems, just given the weird kind of mindset I have sometimes when trying to solve problems. So it could be good or bad, depending on what the organization is.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be an asset. So are you ready to jump into the technical portion?
Yeah, that sounds great to me.
All right, let me share my screen here. All right, can everybody see my screen? I hope so. Okay. Cool. Okay, let's jump in then. So basically we have this problem which you might have seen before. There are a total of n courses, and you have to take 0 to n courses. So some of these courses may have prerequisites. So like if you have to take your CS 102 course, you have to take CS 101 first, something like that. So given all the given the total number of courses as well as the prerequisite pairs, can you finish all courses? And here is an example. So if you have any questions, let me know. Oh yeah, sure.
Cool. Yeah, this seems like it would have been useful. It sounds like a utility for any university for sure, making sure that some courses are actually things that you can take. Yeah, I definitely have some questions actually. My first question is mostly about the input. So I would imagine like we have these prerequisites. Is it possible for us to get any duplicates in this?
No, so you will not have any duplicate prerequisite pairs.
Okay. What about any like malformed input? Like for example, I would imagine if someone's like, there's 1 0 and then there's like 1,000 0, but num course is only like 2.
You can assume just for simplicity that there won't be any malformed input.
Cool. That sounds great to me. Okay. So yeah, I'll have to think about this for a second. Yeah. So to me, the most intuitive thing when I read a problem like this is it sounds like some kind of like process the input first because we're given a list and we want to create some data structure that allows us to kind of gather insights a lot more quickly. And the first thing I think about is some kind of graph structure. But maybe I don't have to go too computer sciencey, and maybe I can think more in terms of just dependencies in a sense. So the thing that I'm immediately thinking about now is we have these courses, and then for every course, they may or may not have some prerequisites. And essentially, like we know if every course is satisfiable, if like we can kind of like take a course, and then once you take the class, you satisfy the requirements for a set of other classes, and then you just kind of keep doing that until like either there's no more classes for you to take because you can't take them, or there are just no classes left. And that's kind of like the abstract thinking I have in mind. And this kind of resembles a graph where essentially it feels like you are starting off at nodes that have no edges into them, and so you get like a set of starting nodes, and you could just kind of traverse the graph, and hopefully there's no loops or no cycles in your graph. Essentially, is what you're looking for. So
yeah, sounds good. That seems pretty much exactly along the lines of what I was thinking. So what sort of graph traversal or algorithm for graph traversal do you think we'll need?
I think you can definitely kind of use either depth first search or breadth first search. Just kind of making sure that you're able to account for the cycles. The way I'm hoping to approach this problem is actually maybe less so in terms of thinking about graphs and more so about thinking about processing input, which is kind of like honestly like a graph, but the way I'm hoping to code it is actually a little bit further removed from that. So yeah.
Sure. All right then. Since you seem to have a pretty good idea of how you want to implement it, do you want to just dive into writing it now? Writing it out?
Sure, sounds great to me. Yeah, so just to start off, I will be writing some kind of form of Python. And just as a side note, only because I think people said they know Python. I don't actually know Python that well. Sounds like everyone knows Python though, so cool. So, but I will say for the interview, I will use Python because I'm comfortable with Python. So yeah, let's say I define a function called canFinish, and essentially given the num courses and the prerequisites, that's autocomplete, nice. essentially what I want to do is first build up some kind of data structure for easy traversal. And I might even just delete that note later. So first, starting out with parsing the prerequisites in num courses and creating some great data structure for traversal. I'm honestly just thinking we could have 2 lists. So I'm thinking, let's say the first list is course to dependence, essentially a mapping, well, not truly a mapping, but you can think of it like a map from the course itself to who depends on the course. So that could just kind of start out as a list of lists, where the list is like the index into the list is for that in course I. These courses depend on this course to be finished. And then I also want another list like course to dependency number, which is kind of like how many courses is this course waiting on for to finish. So like if course 2, for example, could be waiting on both course 0 and course 1 to finish, because course 0 and course 1 are the prerequisites. So for that case, the dep num would be 2. So in this case, I would want to initialize it as 0 for everybody, and then start building up the data structure. So in that case, I want to be parsing or enumerating through prerequisites and kind of updating. So in this case, course to dependence. So I believe in the example, you showed that to take course 1, you should finish course 0. So that means that course, what is it? Oh, this is the opposite, but yeah, so it means that course 0 is the prerequisite for course 1. So I would parse that as, in this case, prereq 1.
Could you give me 1 second here? There's a random line in the middle of the thing.
Yeah.
All right, 1 sec here. Let me share this. I'm sorry, guys. I don't use Zoom. All right.
I'm not looking at the Zoom screen, so sorry, I didn't really see anything.
Yeah, no worries. All right, I should have fixed it, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay. You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Cool. So in this case, the second entry in the prereq has the first entry as a dependent. Cool. And then the second thing you might want to fill out is course to dep num. So prereq, that course depends on one more. So this is kind of just building up the structures that I need. And then from there, I'm going to want to try to finish all courses from here. So from here, I'm kind of just thinking of a traversal in that I'm going to start out by looking at all the courses that have no dependencies or no prereqs, and then add them to some queue, and then kind of just go one by one. As you finish a course, you update the corresponding course to dep num, because that, technically speaking, that course has finished. So the courses that depend on it have one less course to worry about. And so, yeah, and the idea would be you keep doing that and keep re-adding to the queue when a course no longer has any dependencies. And then hopefully at the end, you have no more courses to finish because you finished all of them. So the idea would be like, maybe you have some queue, and then you first add like all of the initial courses to look through. So like essentially all the courses that have no dependencies. Then from there, let's say you have some finished, like how many courses have been finished. And then So we parse each course. So in this case here, the loop that I'm writing, in this case, when you're trying to finish a course, let's say you do something here, after you finish updating its dependents, you're going to increase the finished count, and then the kind of ending condition is that you know you can finish all the courses when you've essentially finished num courses. And so just to fill out the rest here, the idea for here is once you kind of try finishing a course, you update the courses that depend on it. So in this case, all the dependents, for every dependence, you decrement the number that they're depending on. And then you also check, if it happens to be 0, you're going to want to add it to finish next, or finish eventually, just as long as it's in the queue. So that would be the idea I have. I wonder if you're okay with it, and also if I should write some test cases.
Yeah, this seems good. I would like it if you could maybe think of maybe 1 or 2 test cases, maybe like one general test case and one like edge case to run through this.
Sure. Sounds good. So definitely the more basic cases are obviously like it's an empty. I hope that works. Let's see. It should work. You kind of just skip through everything and finish at 0. So pretty good here. Some other things that, let's see, might be interesting is, so yeah, so I guess like one is like the basic finish. So basic can't finish false would be some kind of input like, let's say course num is 3, and maybe got 0, 1 here, and then let's say we also have 1, 0, something like that. So there's some kind of cycle, and such that like 0 depends on 1 and 1 depends on 0. So there's no way for this to be finishable. I'll say this could be 2 because having 3 doesn't really fundamentally change the test case. So to test this out, I would kind of just run through just line by line what the code would do. So starting from here for that test case, course dependence would start out with, honestly, it's actually a little bit harder on the Google Doc, but in this case, let me just annotate here for now. So let's say the input is this. So course dependence would start out with 2, then 0, 0. And you would get here to this loop. And so at the end of it, what you should have is C to D is, let's see, I think this would be, 0, no, 1 and 0, I think is what happens. And then in this case, you would have 1, 1. And then you try to finish all the courses. In this case, you would just not reach this condition. So to finish would be empty, and then your finish would just stay at 0. And so it would just return false there as a result. So it looks like that case works out. Let's see. Yeah, you definitely want to try out the more basic case of like it actually works. So maybe 0 depends that, and then maybe something like that. So that I think should work. So in that case, sorry, I think this might be good one to look through. In this case, your C to D would be, let's see, this one would be empty 0. Then zero. Okay. So yeah, let's see this. Yeah, so from here, you would get here. Yeah. So then you would realize the only thing with dependency number is 0 is course 2. So to finish would be 2. So I'm just going to write some like to finish. Let's just say it has 2 for now. So you pop out 2. So CNUM is 2. And then, so once you finish course 2, you go through all the dependents of course 2, which is 1. And so you decrement 1, or you decrement the dependencies for 1. So in this case, C to DN would become 0. And then you check if it's equal to 0, which it is. So you add it to finish. So in that case, add 1 here. And then you increment finished. So finished. This one. And then you process 1, in which case you realize that 0 depends on it because of this. And then you decrement that to 0, and you add 0 there, finish becomes 2, and then you loop again. 0 has no dependence, so then you increment finish to 3, and then to finish is empty, so then you get here, which 3 equals to num courses. So it looks like in terms of the basic test cases and the kind of like, I guess even the basic edge cases, it works. I could try to think of some other things. Let's see. Some other things that I might want to try eventually are some like longer forms of input, like maybe even longer chains of prerequisites, because it seems like the test cases I've thought of so far kind of just require one chain, each one is kind of like, actually no, the second one has a length of 2, the traversal. So yeah, I would say it's not bad. Did you have any other ideas of what test cases you had in mind?
No, I think you pretty much covered all of them. Yeah, I mean, just as a side note for people watching, we're gonna try to avoid going through longer test cases just for the sake of time. But yeah, this is pretty good. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. But
sounds great to me. Awesome.
Yeah. So to finish up, what do you think the space and time complexity of this algorithm is?
Okay. So it sounds like for the building of our data structure, we're kind of just traversing through the prerequisites. So let's say I would define the variable n to be num courses, and then p to be number of prerequisites. Although I think given the prerequisites, it actually scales to a factor of n. So I believe prerequisites could be, wait, is that true? I think it could be up to n squared prerequisites. So we have n and n squared. So yeah, so we have to kind of traverse through all the prerequisites. Although maybe for the sake of just clarity, I'm going to just say this is p and this is n. And then we could always just say that p is n squared at the end. So yeah, so for our building of our data structure, we have order of p because these are not, it's just this and constant operations. And then, yeah, and then essentially we are, let's see, to a certain extent, we're kind of just, let's see, we're processing the queue, and the queue can have only up to n. in there, but for every n, you could have n dependents, although this is, to be honest, just also a scale of p. But yeah, I would kind of just say this is on the order of prerequisites. But let's see, n, and then here you could have up to n. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of like order of p or n squared.
Okay. Yeah. And what would you say the space complexity is?
Oh yeah, oh sorry, I missed that. Yeah, the space complexity is on the order of n. No wait, actually, it's also p because we're adding this, so we kind of need to restore all the prerequisites. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that sounds good. Yeah, it's pretty much a perfect solve here. I don't really see anything else I can correct you on.
Cool.
For anyone who's watching and is a little bit lost, this is he's basically just trying to find a cycle in a graph. It's pretty much it. It's just with the fluff and courses. So you can do that, and he was using BFS here. So you can use that using DFS or anything. But yeah, I mean, this is sort of like ideally how you should solve it. And Danny basically, James just basically thought of this in like, what was it, 5 minutes before?
Oh, you mean actually? Yeah. Sorry, no, I didn't prepare properly, so yeah, I had to solve it like right before.
I mean, no, I'm not saying like that's a bad thing. It's just like it's typically that's like it's not a huge. It's nothing that's like that's too difficult to solve. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. Although I would say this problem might actually be pretty commonly asked, to be honest. Yeah. So I would not knock it out for being an easy problem. I think it's a pretty fundamental problem. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, basically you guys, yeah, if you use DFS, you're not going to change the time complexity.
Yeah. The idea is kind of like you're visiting every node once. It's kind of the idea. And then for every node you visit, you're looking at all the edges, leaving that node.
Yep.
So, although to be honest, the end result is like you're just looking at all the edges. So
yeah. Yeah, I guess we finished the technical portion a little bit early. Got about 40 minutes left. So, do you want to cover anything else? Otherwise, we could open up to questions.
Yeah, questions are great. I think I did want to point out some things. Obviously, there's no like perfect way to do anything. Some things that I figured I would try to emphasize during this emulation. So hopefully like you guys listened to the questions I was asking. I didn't really have any questions because I've solved this problem before. The questions I was asking was more so that you guys could see like what kinds of questions you should be asking during interviews. So just try to recap some of the things I tried to emphasize. At the start of every interview, this may or may not be controversial, but honestly for me, I always try to err on the side of caution. Always try to like clarify what the input will look like. Sure, for this question, input's pretty straightforward, but there are many cases where the input isn't actually that straightforward. It may misleadingly seem that way, especially if you guys ever interview for like the trading, like HFT space. Some of the problems that I've seen for those interviews, it's a lot of just like parsing input. And so you definitely should clarify like what is the actual input, and just make sure like you cover all the edge cases. If anything, if the answer is always just like, not really, don't worry about it, at least you left a good impression that you care about these things, because when you solve real life software engineering problems, you're gonna have to be asking these questions as well. So that's something I wanted to emphasize. Other things are like, let's see. So for this problem, I couldn't really do it as much, but I don't know how straightforward this is, but you don't always have to code from top to bottom. I kind of tried doing that, but honestly, the code here was so straightforward that I couldn't. But Hareesh, if you could like scroll down a little bit. I don't know if people noticed, but somewhere at this point, I actually did not code this and I wrote pass. I don't know if people noticed that, but if it was a much more complex problem, I would be doing that a lot. So I could remember distinctly for my interviews, I have a tendency to pass on details. So like there are many obviously ways to program things, but one way that I found that works in an interview setting, especially when you're trying to think really quickly and maybe you're going to miss some things, is I always try to quickly get an outline for the problem. So like when I write the solution, I try to make it so that I have every bit of the function down and like abstract everything away. So if there was a problem I'm solving, I know there you could break it down into sub procedures, and you can just kind of write like, oh, comments here, like, oh, parse this input, and then next comment, oh, build this data structure out. You don't have to code everything from top to bottom, and I think doing it from kind of maybe this is like a top-down approach of like solve for the general like structure of the function first. So that way, if you never actually finish the problem, at least the interviewer will know like you had the means to if you had some more time. And at least you're not, I don't know, my mind tends to work like getting into the details is good, but I don't really like switching between getting to the details and like thinking about the overall problem. I like to just think of the overall problem, solve that, and then like comment out all the details and then fill in the details later. So I don't know, that's controversial, but that's just my opinion. I personally like doing that. If you guys ever interview me in the future, I'm the guy who keeps writing pass and like comments everywhere without actually writing code. And then I write the code later. And I think it reflects positively, but I don't actually know. And let's see, for test cases, honestly, you can kind of just figure those out before the interview because the test cases don't actually change that much depending on the problem. There's always like the empty list case, like negative numbers, all that stuff. So yeah, there's probably like a list of test cases you can think of, but if you're interviewing for Google, test cases matter a ton. So yeah, that's all I want to cover. This is a pretty simple problem. I don't want to set the wrong expectations. You will definitely not be getting this problem at Google. It'll be like a bit harder, but hopefully like with enough practice or like, I mean, I'm sure most of you solved this pretty well. So yeah, just like try to take away the way I solved the problem rather than like the actual code or anything. So yeah. Cool. So yeah, with that, I'm open for Q&A if people had any questions. I don't mind talking more about interview stuff, but I figured a lot of that stuff is already online. So if people wanted to ask about other things like new grad life or like promotions or compensation and negotiation, that's also, but I'm also open to just talking about interviews. I think I've done about 200 interviews by now. So I've definitely interviewed at probably any company you've thought of. So have a decent amount of experience just like talking with random companies. So how does this work? Like, how do I just answer random questions in the chat?
I can give you a couple of questions. There's a bunch of questions people have in chat. So the first one is Lisa's asking if you could talk a little bit more about your promotion and negotiation process.
Yeah, promotion works differently at every company, to be honest. And I started at Facebook, and the way Facebook promotion, and by the way, they work differently, but they're all very similar. So for Facebook, the way it works is every half you're eligible for a promotion. I think the bare minimum requirement is that you are part of the half for the majority, you work for the majority of the half, something like that. And so like when you join a company, you're slotted at a certain level. Generally speaking, new grad is like E3 at Facebook, L3 at Google. I think Amazon starts at L4. These like numbers don't really mean anything. I know Snapchat starts at L1. So like the numbers don't actually matter. It's just about like you start out at the base level, and each level gives you a varying amount of pay. So when you think about compensation growth, it'll almost always come from becoming a higher level because there's only so much you can get paid as a entry-level engineer. So sorry, for the process itself, you kind of just need to fill out an evaluation. And when you think you're ready for promotion and your manager thinks you're ready, you get put up and you get evaluated by a calibration committee, which is generally comprised of people that are very, very senior. And they kind of just like grill your profile. They don't actually talk to you. They just like roast you behind your back and then decide whether you're worthy. So for my process, so here's something that I think you guys might take away. positively from this is that if you guys are looking for early promotion, here are my recommendations. I think a lot of people, like when they're younger, have a very awkward relationship with their managers. And I certainly did, and I'm still pretty young. So I still sometimes do, but I will say like your manager and self, your relationship with your manager is super important. They don't really have the ultimate approval to promote you, but they're the ones who will fight for you. So in my case, I had a pretty good relationship with my manager, and I also be very straightforward with them. They're here to help you. So on literally on day one that I joined his team, I literally just sat down with him on the one-on-one. I said, "Hey, I'm looking to get promoted this half." He told me I was crazy, but he said like, he said, I don't know, he said something like, "You seem ambitious. If you want to work hard, I'll let you, but you probably won't get promoted," which is a good thing to say because they don't want you to be disappointed. So like managers should never promise promotions, all that stuff. But he basically gave me more ambiguous problems to solve and give me a chance to prove myself. And when it came down to it, I think at the end of the 4 months, kind of at the end of the year, I had delivered like 3 really solid projects, all of which were projects that I thought of on my own and independently drove and delivered. And one of which was people considered like a senior level project. So then when it came down to promotion, a lot of people said, "No way, this guy's a new grad, literally just 4 months on the team." So I think it was initially like rejected. But then my manager was like, "That's ridiculous. This guy's just gonna leave the company if you do this." So, and something like that. And he pushed really hard, and eventually they reconsidered it, and they kind of just ignored the months and like looked at the work itself and decided it was a clear case for promotion. Ironic because I ended up leaving anyway, but just so some takeaways for you guys might be, if you're looking for a promotion, don't just wait. Straight up just ask them like, "I'm looking to get promoted. What am I lacking? What can I improve on?" Don't be a dick about it. If you don't get promoted, that's fine. Like early promotion you're not entitled to it. It definitely takes a bit more work. So, but yeah, it's kind of like if you don't ask, you won't be rewarded. So that's my biggest learning experience from that. Negotiation process. I interviewed for senior roles and mid-level roles, and I don't think I did that well, like skill-wise on negotiation, but I kind of just went to each company and said, "Hey, I also have Facebook, so I'm not really like looking to move unless you pay mad cash." So I think even for Google, they gave me an offer around February, and I said no, and I waited 4 months, and then they gave me a raise, and then I said, "All right, sounds good." There's a bit more of a story there. I had like SVP approval or whatever, but the timeline is like, for negotiation, the end thing is like, if you you have to be willing to walk away. That's kind of the only thing, but yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna go through the rest of the questions. So kind of wondering why you left FB. I got a really good pay bump, and the work that I'm doing on my new team is similar to the type of work I want to do when I hopefully start my own company. Can you please share experiences with preparing for techno interviews when starting from scratch? A good routine to follow, how long it will take during part-time hours. I might not be the best person to ask for this because personally, my interview prep process was like, I like reading textbooks. So I just read Intro to Algorithms, the CLRS fat book. And that helped me a lot. I don't think I did lead code for my internship stuff. So yeah, but I do. So I'll share what I think other people I've seen do. I've seen a lot of people do like one lead code problem a day or something like that. Oh, I have friends that like do lead code parties, like they solve problems every day with each other. So that's really cool. Yeah, to be honest, for me, I prepared for interviews by doing more interviews. So that might be an interesting thing to try out. Yeah, so from your experience, how much difference in difficulty is there between internship versus junior level interview? internship interviews are generally shorter. I know for like Facebook internship interview, it's like literally just 2 phone screens. And then if you want to do for new grad or like junior level, you're gonna have to do a lot more than 2. So the number of interviews is much more. Reason for that is like internship is basically just a 12-month interview. So I mean, who really has it rougher? But yeah, the difficulty though, I would expect new grad to be slightly more difficult, but not too much more.
I can give you a little bit. I did the
Yeah.
new grad interview, so it is. Well, I guess the difficulty mostly lies in the length because you had to sit through like I think four interviews when I did it, and it's like back to back, and it's pretty brutal. So I think like, that plays into it, and I guess the questions. I wouldn't say they're like that much different from the internship questions. I guess they might be a little bit harder, but it's mainly just the fatigue of sitting through that many interviews.
Definitely true. Oh, so one thing that you guys might find interesting is because everything's virtual now, the virtual interviews, you could technically, well, I've definitely seen this possible. You could actually ask them to break up the on-site. Like, can I do 2 on-site interviews on Monday and then 2 the next day? Like, you could do that nowadays. So that's pretty nice. Small little thing you can request.
Next one is does school or background matter for that first interview?
Oh, yeah, definitely. But it doesn't discount you, right? But it's kind of like if you went to a really good school and got a high GPA, or like you have a really strong background, it'll definitely help you for that getting the first interview. But like there are also many other things that could help you get the interview. So these are not like exclusive to people that go to really good schools. Like I didn't even go to that really good school, to be honest. So what's your advice on connections/referrals for internships? Oh, that's great. Yeah, all of the internships that I've done were through connections. So that's nice. Yeah, I think, just don't be afraid to reach out to people. Yeah, people that you maybe vaguely know might help you out. I remember like this, like emailing this one company like every few months, and then they eventually like let me in for an interview. So yeah, like if the universities ever open again, try to go in person and like go to these events. And any industry person you meet, keep in close contact with them. You never know how helpful they could be in the future, or hopefully you could be helpful to them.
To add on to that, we are like pretty much everybody who refers you, aside from I think interns, we get paid for if you get in. So like we have an incentive to refer you.
Yeah. So yeah, there's incentive. Also, go to hackathons. How I ended up at Facebook as an intern was my teammate was interning at Facebook, and then they referred me. So hackathons are a good way to meet people and show them that you're legit. You have a plan/timeline for your startup? Are you going with the flow? So I'm currently, I've probably in like a few years, or like 1 or 2 years. Although I wouldn't say that to Google, but yeah. How should you prepare for behavioral interviews? What specific experience like which Fridays? Oh, okay. Behavioral interviews usually speaking, you're not going to have specific behavioral interviews as a new grad, I think. I don't remember any, at least mine, to be honest. I don't think so.
Most of those for I think senior positions or mid-level.
Yeah, you usually don't get behavioral interviews because like everyone kind of, I don't know, I guess there's not much insight to gain from interviewing a 22-year-old about their behavior, but but they will still ask you behavioral questions, right? Like during technical interviews. Yeah, my advice is like actually think about it. Think about like what kind of person you want to portray. So actually going back to the earlier question that Hareesh asked me, he asked me like what kind of engineer am I? that was that answer I gave was kind of the exact answer I gave for Google, which I think they liked based on their reaction. And the answer I gave was like, I was a double-edged sword. To be honest, that's low-key a bullshit answer. And let me explain why. Like, uh, what I was trying to tell them, like if I was interviewing for Google, was that I am somebody, I'm claiming, it's not true. I'm claiming that I could solve really hard problems. And you have to keep in mind, Google has hundreds of thousands of employees. What they value is not just someone that could like write code. They'll highly value someone that could like elevate their service to like new heights through like random solutions. And they have plenty of developers to solve all the normal stuff. So I specifically tailored the answer to Google because I knew that like what they were looking for wasn't just another engineer. um, so but then you also want to seem humble. You don't want to go there and be like, yeah, I'm just a solid ass engineer, give me any problem, I'll solve it. You just sound like kind of a someone you don't want to work with. So it's always good to like throw some caveats. Like nobody's really perfect, so always err on the caution of like being a little bit more humble, and understanding your own weaknesses is good. So yeah. What specific experiences about course projects and internships should, I don't understand that question, sorry. Should we prepare? How can we find good projects to put on our resume if our school is not strong? So it depends on the school, right? Like, so, because I don't know what a school being strong means, to be honest, but the usually there are a lot of opportunities on campuses. And unfortunately, I don't know about every school, but if you go to a school that has a campus, usually speaking, there are probably tech companies nearby. And there are probably professors in your school that research computer science. I realize that might not be the case for some schools, which maybe there's a different case for people that go to those schools. But for the majority of schools, if you're like majoring in computer science, there will probably be some computer science community. So I would try to get involved in those. Professors don't care that much about your resume. So that's a good way, like getting research experience. Usually when you're an undergrad and you do research, you're probably just doing development, unless you're a really strong undergrad, which is good to do. But if you just want to do projects, I highly recommend, or I don't, actually it depends on the person. I'll just say what I did and feel free to take it if you want. It's not a general statement, but what I did was in my freshman year, I really liked Node.js for some reason, because it was like the popular thing at the time. And I learned it in and out. I literally read the entire documentation. I don't know, I was crazy for that thing. I don't know why. I tried learning like how it worked internally, like how is the event loop implemented, things like that. And so what that'll help you do is it'll help you relate computer science concepts back like from your courses back to practical applications. And like when you take your classes, you'll have an eye out for these topics. Like when I was taking operating systems, I was like, oh wait, I know this stuff. I've learned about it from Node.js. So my general recommendation is pick a technology and a type of solution and try to learn it very well. And I think focusing on one thing, don't just learn a ton of languages. It's pretty useless. Become a really strong person in one technology, and you'll notice that people will, it's like the idea of like when you're young and you're a specialist, you're not actually a specialist, but like when you're young and you're really good at this one thing, like people blow out of proportion how good you are at everything else when you're really not that good at anything else. So sorry, the answer to the question is pick a technology, get good at it. Figuring out projects from there is pretty easy. Do you know anything about PM and data science interview at FE or Google? Unfortunately not. I heard that nowadays even people many that don't get interviews. Do you have any knowledge or comments on that? That is very true. I referred 70 people to Facebook and I think 5 of them got interviews. Very unfortunate. I can't tell if I got blacklisted or it's just that hard to get interviews, but also COVID. So I don't know. Sorry, you were saying?
Oh yeah, no. I got referred by one of my friends and it's sort of like a crapshoot. If you don't get it, it's genuinely not your fault. First year, I didn't get a referral, and I got in. Like they gave me an interview. I didn't even have to go through phone screens. Second year, they just rejected me at the resume screen. So I think it like sort of depends on when you apply, and I don't know if the recruiter likes you.
Right, right. Yeah. I agree with Hareesh there. It's like also not all referrals are equal, to be honest. I think like when they do referrals, they ask you like how well do you know this person, and you could write a note. I think strong recommendations do go a little bit further because based on my Facebook referrals, I kind of like mass sent referrals, but then I had some referrals that I wrote like, this guy is like super strong, or like, she's one of the best engineers that I've had pleasure to work with. And those people got interviews. So that's just anecdotally. So I don't know if it actually works, but do they have any kind of importance to MOOCs and other personal projects? MOOCs, I think that's the online courses. I don't think that helps you out much, to be honest, for resumes, but whatever you learn is useful. Personal projects, honestly, same thing for personal projects. I'm gonna be honest, like it's better than nothing, but it doesn't give you that much unless it's like, unless your project was like you were the creator of Node.js, like then yeah, like join our company. But if your project was like, I built a calculator app, like it's better than nothing, but it won't give you much. Like having more legitimate like industry experience will help you out much more. I personally find it extremely difficult and pretty daunting to contribute to open source projects. It seems much more difficult contributing to existing projects than writing one from scratch for me personally. What suggestions do you have to get into contributing, and what languages would be good to learn? So I think your concern is super valid. I think I echo that to you, or I agree. So I don't want you to feel like it's just for you personally. I think it's like, yeah, pretty valid opinion. So that's kind of why people value industry experience a lot. It's because what people want is someone that could work with an existing code base, not just like write their own spaghetti code. So yeah, it's just a skill that you have to learn over time. And part of being able to understand code bases better is understanding the underlying technologies better. So like if you don't really know how C++ works and you're just trying to contribute, it's gonna be pretty hard because there's so many different things. If you're the type of person that's like, you hate C++ because it segfaults a lot, then yeah, you probably should just try to learn the language a little bit better. So those are like some things. So my suggestions are like, just try to learn a language pretty well. And then contribute to projects that write that language. Do large tech companies care much about open source contributions, or would they rather see some real experience like doing a SWE internship? There's no absolute answers, and also not all SWE internships are equal. If you're a SWE intern at like a company that you started, like that's not even a real company, it might not mean as much. But and also if your open source contribution is to your friend's project that has like 2 GitHub stars, maybe it's not as meaningful. On the other hand, like there's no absolute answer is what I'm trying to say to you, Chris. But on the other hand, like if you open source contributed to Docker or some other notable projects, that'll be pretty strong. But please don't make it like a README, because I think it's kind of embarrassing if you get caught. So yeah. Yeah, but yeah, doing a SWE internship at a legitimate company is nice, but this is all variable. Like it truly depends on the reputation of whatever you're working on. Do you feel a distinct difference in culture between Facebook and Google? Hell yeah, dude, they're just hella different. I mean, they're both good big companies, but Facebook is much more agile, and not like in the literal like agile software thing, but like they just move a lot faster. And Facebook feels a little bit more happy, but I will say Google's not bad on its own. They have their own pros and cons for sure. I'm satisfied with where I am. That's my end answer. How many hours per week do you generally work? I heard some Google FB engineers at some teams work a ton of hours. At Facebook, I probably work like 25 to 30 hours a week, sometimes 20. At Google, currently 15, but I am trying to become more diligent. So do not take that answer as what a normal engineer works. And writing comments in open source, like, yeah, go for it. Like, I respect that, man. If you write comments, it's great, but like, yeah, I wouldn't call yourself a, oh, I mean, like, sorry, there are people that contribute by writing comments for sure. Like, but if you wrote like one line comment, come on, you're not a contributor to the, anyway, any advice on preparing for system design interviews? Do large companies ask these types of questions? I think very rarely for new grad. You'll see system design more, like more on like senior or mid-level at least, but I know I've definitely seen system design on new grad. Like I know Robinhood asks quote unquote system design. It's not like a system design that like other companies would ask though. So it's very helpful to know. So like I think every new grad or every like student should get to understand the full tech stack that companies operate in. And generally speaking, like at Google, like when you join, there will be like a bootcamp kind of thing. I think Facebook's a little bit better at doing the whole onboarding thing, but like at Google, at least they try to make it so every engineer understands how your code runs. Those are all like, you should learn that stuff. That's pretty important. So when you start understanding things like how do networks work, how do I don't know, how do distributed systems work on a basic level, I think it's pretty helpful. And when it comes to system design, when you know those core fundamentals, it won't be too hard to answer them.
To add on to that,
Yeah.
like even if not for interviews, I personally have found system design concepts to be super useful just for getting, because like I'm in my current job, because as a new grad, one of the things you're expected to do is sort of design new systems, and that's like that helps you work towards your promotion. So like if you're able to do that independently, like James did here, you have a much stronger case for your promotion when the time comes around.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I would look at being able to design systems as like a prereq to like course schedule, prereq to being able to move up in the ladder for sure. It's a skill that will help you become more independent as an engineer. But caveat being, not all companies need designers of systems. Some companies just need other roles. So it depends. So sorry, I got a private message, but I think this is a pretty general. I'll only read the general parts. It said, I would love to chat one-to-one later on and talk about my passions to work at Facebook or Google. Can I connect with you over email? Yes, you guys could connect with me over email if you want. To be honest, like about passion for working at a company, like I'm probably the worst person to ask about like passion for working at a company. But you're free to ask me about that stuff. Maybe ask me about like passions about not working at a company. Like I'll probably be passionate about that conversation. But yeah, I would totally be down to talk about experiences at companies. So feel free to email me. I have a fake email here so that you guys are free to email me here. Wait, how do I type? Wait, I can't really type. Oh, here you go. Yeah, feel free to email me there, and I will answer any question you send over as long as it's not creepy. So which would recruiters care more about when it comes to bringing people into interviews for internships? Industry experience at a startup where you do a lot and make a project that will get users, or interning at a big name company? That was a pretty solid question to ask because I worried about that too. I'm gonna be honest here. Like recruiters don't know what it means to get a lot of users. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can say that like you did all this stuff, but they're not gonna know what you mean. So at the end of the day, like for them, when they're screening resumes, if they see intern from Facebook versus intern at what's like a startup, I don't know, intern at some 10-person startup, I'm sure at that startup you got more comprehensive experience, but I feel like you just have to keep in mind the idea of variance. Like, sure, there will be those needle in the haystacks, but like it's kind of hard. Like, think from the recruiter's shoes. But I kind of also feel like it's important to say that internships, like some people decide to do it just for the like name brand and whatnot. I think a lot of people that do it for the sake of learning and getting better, they have probably a better outlook for longer term success. So, and that's not to say you can't join a big company for the enjoyment. There is a lot of amazing projects being worked on here. But if you have the choice and you feel like you really want to work at this startup and you feel like you're leaning against it because there's this big company offer, I will just add that like the difference is probably not that big. Like, so yeah. What language do you usually use for interviews? Which would you recommend? I personally use C++ because that's what I know. I recommend just using any of the popular languages that you're comfortable with. Generally speaking, that's C++, Python, Java. I don't know if there's any other popular ones. Like, please don't use like C#. Like, nobody's gonna know the language to help you out. So, but if that's the only one you know, like for sure, like go for it. But I would recommend doing popular languages just for the sake of like getting the interviewer on board. Sorry, I didn't mean passion for not working. I meant like if someone like is talking to me about their passion for working at a big tech company, I can't really relate that much. Like to me, it's just a job. But I'm definitely open ears and I'll share as much information as I can. I didn't mean it like I hate working. Like I like software engineering, kind of. So, have you worked with bootcamp grads? Seems like there are a lot of bootcamps popping up. Is the market saturated? Have I worked with them? No, I have not. Although I know that there are some legit bootcamp people that work at Facebook. So, yeah, there are a lot of smart people that do bootcamps. Is the market saturated? Unfortunately, I'm not of the knowledge base to answer that properly, but probably, yeah, it'll probably be more saturated over time. Just natural reaction to the amount of money that's put into it. How come you only work 15 to 20 hours a week? Yo, it's hard, man. I don't know, motivation, but also what is it called? You know, there comes to a point when you realize that like just like school, it's not hourly, it's just like, what is it called? Performance based. So when I was at Facebook, at some point I realized like I was gonna get promoted, so I was like, all right, I guess I just need to deliver as much as they expect, and it just ended up working out that number of hours doesn't exactly equate to productivity, but I promise that I will work more. I mean, I'm promising to my Lord and Savior Google. So yeah, I do not recommend working 20 hours a week. That's not a good idea. I'm getting screwed over right now. If you reset your programming experience and had to pick one language to feel an expert at today, what would it be? C++, because that's where all the money is being poured into. Hell yeah. Because C++ is the language for the what are they called? The language for the people that write programs for programmers, I guess. So like, that's like, you know, HFTs or like train companies, they need C++. Even like pretty much every company that is working on cutting edge technology uses some kind of low level programming language. And I've noticed that it's a lot easier to reuse that knowledge across teams and across companies. So yeah, I think I would stick with C++, but it depends on what you're interested in. How much of your knowledge did you gain from college versus your own contribution in your free time? To be honest, like for college, I definitely learned a lot in school, but I felt like most of my learning was on my own time. I was a nerd, honestly, in college. Like I didn't go to like a top college or anything, but I definitely liked computer science. I don't know if you guys feel that, but like when I was learning about like how networking works, I was like amazed because, I just played games all day in high school, and, just thinking about how much knowledge and engineering I was poured into like creating this like super joke of a game. Like it was just insane for me to absorb. So I really wanted to keep learning. So a lot of it was on my own time and my like on like contributing on my own. So yeah, and I think that's generally the case for if you want to move up faster, because it's just like a competition at the end of the day. So do you use any ML/deep learning in any of your projects, or that's like totally other team? Everyone uses quote unquote ML, right? Statistics, but no, not really. Not like the ML that you're thinking about. Linux, Mac, or Windows, Mac, but I have to use Linux for a job. Yeah, my name, you can call me James. Yeah, please just don't search me up. I'm trying to stay low key, but you're free to talk to me on email. Just like don't send me a virus or something on email. So.
His name's Jeff Dean. He's secretly actually the senior fellow at Google.
I wish, man, I wish. All right, looks like there's no more questions. So,
all right.
Yeah, it was great talking to you all, and feel free to email me. I love talking to people about, or I love helping people, contrary to me being anonymous. Yeah, so.
Well,
Cool.
Thanks for doing this, James. It's been great. I think you gave these guys a lot of, you gave everybody a lot of things to think about.
Nice. Would I be willing to refer you? Yo, just email me, man. Let's see what I can do.
All right, guys. Please do fill out the form. Otherwise, Julia's going to yell at me. So, yeah. Besides that, if no more questions, then let's call it here.
Cool. All right.
I'll post the email he has on the Sweet Chat, so everybody can get it. All right. Thanks for attending, everybody. Thanks, James.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys, for coming. Good luck on your interviews.